Hi, welcome back to the Introduction to Personnel Selection in Module 8. This is Dr. Gwen Fisher in Psychology 440. This is Module 8.2 called Recruitment. In this particular module, we will talk about recruitment and a number of specific things about it. By the end of this module, you should be able to explain what is called the attraction, selection, attrition model. You should understand the importance of recruitment as part of the talent acquisition and management process. You should be able to identify strategies as well as best practices that are commonly used by organizations today for recruitment, and also be able to identify ways to assess whether recruiting methods are effective. The outline for this particular module 8.2 is as follows. First, I will talk about the attraction, selection, attrition model. Then I will talk about what we mean by the term recruitment, and then also why recruitment is important. The attraction, selection, attrition model was a model, or is a model, that was published by Ben Schneider in a paper published in Personnel Psychology in 1987. The gist of this model is that it's a theoretical model describing the process by which people are attracted to join as well as leave an organization, and that this process takes place across 3 different steps: attraction, selection, and attrition. So before anybody can be hired to a particular organization and hired for a particular job, first they need to be attracted to work there. It usually is rare that somebody is coerced to work at a particular place, although there may be exceptions. So typically it works where somebody first is attracted to work there, and it's the applicant that makes the first step toward that particular process. In other words, at this first step called attraction, the person who is driving this is the applicant. The second step of the process is selection. This is where the organization, the company, the employer decides whether or not they want to select that individual who is attracted to work there. Usually there are multiple applicants for a particular job, and so at this stage, who holds the power and the decision switches to the company. And then the third step in the process is attrition, and attrition can happen in a bunch of different ways. What attrition means is leaving the organization, and one way that people attrit or leave is that they quit. They say, to heck with this, I'm done with this, I want out of here, and they resign. That could just be quitting their job, it could be retiring at the end of one's career, or it could be that the person's not a good fit, they're not performing well, or maybe they violate a company rule or policy and they're asked by the organization to leave. Good old Donald Trump, you're fired, from The Apprentice. So what this model depicts are the different steps by which people can decide whether, let me back up. This model depicts the 3 steps by which different people, whether it's the organization or the applicant, him or herself, ends up working for the organization, and who's choosing in that process. So what is recruitment? Recruitment is generally the process by which organizations seek to attract talent to the organization. It goes back to the attraction, selection, attrition model. The goal of recruitment is to get people attracted and get people wanting to work in your company. This is the first step in the employee selection process, which is one of the reasons why we're talking about recruitment early on. So you want to, ideally, if you're working in human resources, you want to attract the kind of talent that is desired in the organization. Have people who are capable of doing the work that you're interested in, and have them be the people that you want around and that you want. So why is recruitment important? Well, hopefully it goes without saying that you can't really select or choose the people to work for your company if they're not attracted to work there to begin with. We don't have slaves legally in the United States anymore, and so people usually work based on their own free will. Going back to Schneider's attraction, selection, attrition model, the people make the place. That was the title of that particular paper. And as I indicated in the previous module, there's this fantastic book by Jim Collins called Good to Great, where he talks about one of the key steps for organizational effectiveness being the notion of getting the right people on the bus. Other reasons why recruitment is important. Well, hiring the wrong person is really expensive. Have you ever been involved in the selection process? Spending time sifting through resumes or deciding who to call? Going through the process of interviewing candidates? In some cases, so for example, when I applied to the faculty position here at Colorado State University, they flew me here from Michigan. I'm guessing that travel expenses for getting me here over a couple days probably cost about $1,500 between a plane ticket, hotel, meals, airport transportation, all of that stuff, not to mention the time that people spent over the course of a 2.5-day interview. For many jobs, a lot of training is involved, and depending on the training and the nature of the training, that can be an expensive investment on behalf of the organization. And then there's also just the time factor for how long it takes to get somebody on board and up to speed with what they need to do to perform their job effectively. And all of those things take time and resources. And if you hire the wrong person and they end up quitting, or they end up being asked to leave because they're not able to cut the mustard, or in other words, able to perform their job effectively, then it's a mistake and it's really costly. In addition, it's usually hard to hire somebody who doesn't apply to the job. I don't know that I've told you the story of my attraction to the position here at Colorado State, but it goes back to 2011 when I was at a conference in Aspen, and it was gorgeous fall day. Blue skies, temperature in the low 70s, out for a little bit of a hike before going to a meeting. It was just absolutely gorgeous and just fell in love with it. Went to the Denver airport on my way home, called my husband, said, I think we need to move to Colorado. I think we'd really be happy there. So you need to know that if a job in IO psychology ever opens up in the state of Colorado, I want to apply. And he kind of laughed and said, yeah, whatever, here we are in Michigan. And then lo and behold, about a year later, I saw a posting on the Society for IO Psychology website. I searched specifically by state for Colorado. Guess how many jobs popped up? Well, if you guessed one, you were right. One and only one job was available, and that was this one for a tenure track assistant professor in IO psychology. And I said, aha, and decided to apply for the job. And contacted a colleague of mine who was working at CSU at the time and said, hey, I saw the job ad. What do you think? Would I be a good fit? And we engaged in a whole discussion about that. And then we talked about what they were looking for. And I also enjoyed my job in Michigan. So there was part of it where I didn't want to move. I didn't want to leave my friends. I had a higher paying job where I was before. So who wants to give up a bigger paycheck? Only irrational people like me, I suppose. Nonetheless, what they told me was that, well, if you would like to come to Colorado State, you need to apply. We can't hire you if you don't do the application and apply for the job. So I guess the rest is history. Here I am. You're stuck with me lecturing to you about this material, hopefully learning something along the way. But bottom line here is that somebody has to apply if they want to get the job. So the goals of recruitment, generally speaking, are to get a large as well as a qualified applicant pool. Why would you want a large applicant pool, you might ask? Well, that's so you as the HR manager or you as the company have a lot of choice in who you hire so that you can look at multiple candidates. If you have one and only one candidate apply for the job, you might end up taking that person because you need to fill the position, but they may not be the best person for the job. So you want a large applicant pool, and you want them to be people who are qualified for obvious reasons. In addition, recruitment serves an important process of being able to convince people that they want to work for your company. In other words, why would I want to come to CSU as opposed to go to any other university in the country? There are many, many wonderful things about CSU and our department, my colleagues, our students. It's not just the beautiful location in Colorado. That's just kind of a nice bonus. And well, don't get me started on all the really good beer here. That's certainly a positive as well. So goals of recruitment, the last one here is that we want to leave the applicants with a positive impression of the organization. In other words, we want them, regardless of whether they get the job, we want them to enjoy their experience and have positive views. So my question for you is, why should organizations care about applicants' reactions even if they don't end up getting hired? What do you think about that? Well, it could be that somebody's attracted to work for a company because they're a customer. And if they have a bad experience in the selection process as an applicant, they may end up not being a customer anymore and taking their business elsewhere. It could be that if they have a bad experience, they'll say bad things about the company to other people, which could hurt them in terms of customer service or losing customers in other ways. Um, Depending on whether people have positive or negative experiences can really impact how they view the company and how others they talk with about their experiences view the company. If you have, even if you don't get the job, if you have a really positive experience, you might recommend it to a friend or a colleague who's looking for a job that might be a good fit. So there are lots of reasons why companies should care about applicant reactions regardless of who is hired for the job. In fact, you might have thought about some additional reasons. Couple other things about recruitment. First of all, there is internal versus external recruitment. Internal recruitment is where you have an opportunity to recruit people who already work at your organization. These might be people who transfer from a different position or are promoted. Benefits of internal recruitment is that it can be good for morale to create new opportunities for people who are already there. It might be ways to promote people and move them up in the company. It might also be a fantastic tool to increase retention as a way of keeping people there rather than having them just stuck doing what they're doing for a long time with no opportunities to transfer or to move up. External recruitment, on the other hand, as you probably know or may have guessed, involves hiring new employees from outside your organization. In other words, getting people from elsewhere. The benefit of this is that it's an opportunity to bring in new ideas. You can increase diversity. Oftentimes, companies might engage in what's called groupthink, which is a social psychological term for having a group of people together that have a tendency to kind of get stuck in a similar way of thinking. And by bringing in new people to the organization, you get some of those new ideas and ways of challenging things rather than people who just say, well, this is how we've always done it, and not knowing any other way, or maybe it's been a while so they forget other ways for doing it. So, what are some of the ways that we can perform recruitment? How do companies or organizations recruit employees? Well, a very popular one now is through company websites. If you're interested in a job, you can go look for the website for that particular organization and read about it. Oftentimes, there is a tab that says About or for more information or contact us, and you can get a ton of information about what an organization does, what their products are, what their philosophy is, and so forth. Corporate social responsibility is a hot topic right now, the notion of people wanting to work for companies that do good in the world. And this is one of the ways that companies have an opportunity to communicate about that with potential applicants. Another recruitment method is through social media. They might put out a job ad on Facebook or Twitter or any of a number of social media that are quite popular these days. These might include things like LinkedIn. Have you heard of LinkedIn? If not, you may want to consider putting together a professional profile on LinkedIn, as it's become a popular tool across different fields and areas for people to connect with others and network. There might be other media. You might hear about it on the radio, in a newspaper, some of the more maybe old-fashioned ways. You might see a job posting on campus. You might see a flyer or something posted. You might know about the company through product offerings. Maybe if it's a company that you want to work for because you really enjoy it. A very popular employer in Fort Collins, Colorado, as you might expect, is New Belgium Brewery. And I'm going to guess that it might be because of the beer that people might want to work there, although certainly they're known for a great corporate culture and treating their employees well. But there is the beer factor. Another way that somebody could recruit is through customer service by having a positive customer service interaction or learning from a customer service representative about a potential job opportunity. Other people aside from customer service representatives might share information. So if we're hiring here at CSU, I might recruit or reach out to colleagues who are interested in an academic job and say, hey, we're looking to hire a new faculty member. Might you be interested? So on and so forth. And then another method or source is from an external staffing or recruitment firm. This is a company that is paid by the employer to go out and headhunt or to seek people to fill a particular position. This is often an effective strategy for companies when they're looking for specific expertise or specific criteria, where many of the recruitment methods listed above are going to be less effective or perhaps hard to reach specific populations or groups of applicants. So, some of the best practices in employee recruitment include first, accurately communicating what the company is all about, what are the goals, and what is the culture. Why do you think it's important to communicate accurately? Well, if it's not accurate, it could be misleading. It could overglorify what the experience might be, or it might paint too negative of a picture relative to what somebody might actually experience. It's important in employee recruitment to be really clear about what the job is and what the role is that the individual will play in the company. What will they get to do? What will they not get to do? Another term for describing this is what's called a realistic job preview. The emphasis here is on this word realistic. It's absolutely critical for individuals to have a real picture of what is expected and what a job is like, rather than a particularly rosy or better picture of what it might be. For example, imagine a customer service job for a cable company. Most of us have not always had positive experiences with cable companies or satellite companies and so forth, especially in the billing department, because they can do all kinds of things and play tricks and make it really hard to get out of service contracts and so forth. And so a realistic job preview in that setting would be giving workers or applicants a heads up that they might end up dealing with some irate customers along the way. Other best practices in recruitment include offering compensation and rewards that are desirable, giving a salary or hourly wage that is really going to be on the good end, something that's competitive and fair for the work being performed. But sometimes it's more than just pay. It's things like number of weeks of vacation, whether you have paid sick time or contributions to a retirement plan or health insurance. There are many other benefits that companies can offer. So I already indicated a bit of what a realistic job preview is, but this says it a little bit more clearly that it's a technique for presenting prospective employees with an authentic view of the organizational life and to provide a realistic rather than an overly optimistic view of what the job will be like. The goal here is really to set realistic expectations as opposed to dissatisfaction. I'm not sure if you've ever done any online dating, but as somebody who is now married to somebody that I met via online dating, just thought I'd mention that sometimes in that whole online dating process, it can be a little frustrating if what you see in the ad and the picture turns out not to be what the person really looks like or acts like in real life. And so successful online dating often comes about due to authenticity. While you might attract a lot of people up front by putting some fantastic picture, maybe of say a cousin or somebody that looks way better, isn't going to really work very well when the person meets you and finds out that that wasn't really you. So just be beneficial. So I apologize. It was a little tongue-in-cheek to talk about the online dating thing, but hopefully you get the point because those are ads of a different type. So how can we recruit if we are effective in our recruitment strategies? First, we can count the number of applicants that apply for a position. If the goal is a large number of qualified applicants, we want to count how many people we get to determine whether it's a large applicant pool or not. And in addition to just in general how many people apply, we want to count how many of those are viable. In other words, actually qualified for the job and available. We can also assess our recruitment effectiveness in terms of how expensive it is. Utility, what is the cost per applicant or the cost per qualified applicant? Sometimes recruitment methods cost a lot of money. For example, hiring a staffing organization can be very, very costly, but it might be worth it if it's for particular talent that you need or for a particularly high level in an organization. Sometimes it's especially helpful to increase diversity and for many reasons, diversity can be beneficial. We'll be talking about that, I believe, later on in this course in a separate module. But in order to achieve that, we want to have a number of applicants from underrepresented groups. And so some recruitment methods might be especially beneficial for reaching out to people who are members of minority or other underrepresented groups. It's also important to count the number of successful applicants. In other words, of the number of people who are hired, how many of them end up being successful, or how many people are successful in getting through the recruitment and selection process. That's another metric that we can look at. And lastly, related to what I was discussing earlier about ways to determine whether it's important to understand that how people react to the selection process and their interactions with the company, it can be beneficial to get feedback from applicants or from people who were hired to learn more about whether the recruitment was effective just by simply getting feedback and what they thought. So that wraps up everything that I had planned to talk with you about with regard to employee recruitment. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And the next module will be Module 8.3 on selection testing.